Welcome to VFNtv. I'm Greg Lancaster, and joining me just a moment is Steve Kaliszewski. Well, you're looking at her. She is our new U.S. Secretary of Education, Betsy DeVos. She's over 65,800,000 children and educating them. You think about this. The Word of God says, you train up a child in the way they should go. When they get older, will not depart from it. Thank God we have a godly person in the education area. As a matter of fact, she is a philanthropic person. She's a philanthropist. Her and her husband, Richard, or she goes by Dick DeVos, they go around, they've been helping for quite some time, helping out with education around the nation and so many different things. But you think about this. What would you do if somebody gave you $5 billion and they told you you need to be able to go out and help folks? Well, their family's worth more than over $5 billion. And that's what they've been doing. They've been really helping us out for quite some time right now. And you think about it, you know, God's called us to be philanthropists, you know, where we're actually going around trying to seek to do good. And you think of what is the definition of somebody that's philanthropic or philanthropist, you know, somebody who's going out and helping folks? Well, the definition of it is a person who seeks to promote the welfare of others, especially by generous donations of money to certain causes. So it's somebody just going out being kind to folks, somebody out going out to help folks. And if they have the ability to bless them financially, that's what they do. That's what they've been doing. But you think about this, 65 million children. I mean, it's like this year we're seeing things so differently. It's so important, whoever is responsible for educating our children. We're going to find out today, that's 21% of our population when you think about it. But you know, she stated, as a matter of fact, on a Fox News interview sometime back that the education system that we're using in our schools today is over 200 years old. We're using that kind of system, and we're finding out, well, why is our test scores dropping down? Why are they dropping down? Well, you know, first of all, you can go and see it on Wikipedia, but her family's worth $5.1 billion and more. Her father is the one, I don't know if you ever went into your car, your sun visor, you know, and it has a little light in a mirror and you open it up. Her father invented that. And he is a billionaire off of automotive industry. And she married Richard DeVos, and his father, which is Richard DeVos, I guess, Sr., he founded Amway, and he also owns Orlando Magic. And so they're a very successful family. They could do anything they wanted to do, but they said, you know what? I want to help America out. I want to help the young students of America get an education. And she's been working for years to be able to help give freedom of choice to the parents, so you can send your kid to anywhere you want to go to school, and they'll give you the money to be able to do that. And so you're looking at her family right here. I think you can see her whole family. If you can take a look at this. And you're looking, this is Betsy here, and that's Richard, and that's his dad and his mom, the owner, both co-owner of Orlando Magic. And this right here is Dick and Betsy themselves together. I think, yeah, there you are. And this is who's over our education. A Christian woman, a godly woman, and one that her and her husband have done so many different things. And I'm excited about it. You know, she went through so many things when she was going through Congress, and she could be doing anything. She doesn't need the paycheck. She doesn't need the harassment going on. They called her names. The teacher unions attacked her. People that were getting support from the teachers union, certain senators, called her every name in the book, and it was just tragic. It's like, this lady's trying to help us out. She's proven it by giving her own money and time, you know, over the years, giving it to many of the people that are in America, and yet she was treated very, very disrespectful. And she's done so many things. We'll make that available, you know, to you, what she has done. But her father, in case you don't know this, her father's name is Edgar Prince. And he's the one that founded the Prince Corporation, and that's where the visors and the different things that were being built. But she spoke after she went through all of that approval taking place at Congress. I don't know if you saw that or not, but it was just, I encourage you not to watch all that, but it was on C-SPAN as well. And she went through it. She did that for you. She did that for our kids, and she did that for 21% of our population. Because you think on a previous program, we talked about this, that only 15% of regular church attenders have a biblical worldview of the world. Only 15%. Only 4% of millennials have a biblical worldview. Now imagine giving our education system over to people who don't acknowledge God, don't want anything to do with God. I mean, that's where we've been for quite some time. Now we're turning this whole thing back, and having Betsy DeVos there is so important. When she made it to the approval rating, she got sworn in by President Donald Trump, and this is her speaking at the CPAC introducing herself and talking a little bit about what happened. Let's visit her now at the CPAC.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you for that very warm welcome. I love you. I love the energy and enthusiasm that CPAC brings. So I'm Betsy DeVos. You may have heard some of the wonderful things the mainstream media has called me lately. I, however, pride myself on being called a mother, a grandmother, a life partner of 38 years tomorrow, and perhaps the first person to tell Bernie Sanders to his face that there's no such thing as a free lunch. The media has had its fun with me, and that's okay. My job isn't to win a popularity contest with the media or the education establishment here in Washington. My job as Secretary of Education is to make education work for students. But today we know the system is failing too many kids. How do we know that? Our nation's test scores have flatlined. 1.3 million children drop out of school every year. And because the previous administration spent $7 billion of your dollars on school improvement grants, thinking they could demonstrate that money alone would solve the problem. Yet their own report, issued as they walked out the door, showed that it had zero impact on student outcomes and performance. They tested their model and it failed miserably. Now, this is not an indictment of teachers. We all know great public school teachers. My mom was one. Good teachers make a real difference. Good teachers deserve to be honored and compensated accordingly. But the education establishment has been blocking the doorway to reforms, fixes, and improvements for a generation. This is not a left or a right issue. This is an American issue. We need education to work for every child. So let me ask you, do you believe parents should be able to choose the best school for their child regardless of their zip code or family income? Me too, and so does President Trump. We have a unique window of opportunity to make school choice a reality for millions of families. Both the President and I believe that providing an equal opportunity for a quality education is an imperative that all students deserve.
I'm so thankful for Betsy DeVos that she was willing to go through all those trials, do all that horrific things that took place, being personally attacked, for standing up, wanting to be there for our children. I mean, think about it. When you have $5+ billion, you could be on some island somewhere just enjoying the sun, but she chose to not do that. She chose to be here and for many years to be able to help with education in our nation. But there's people that have an agenda that she talked about them. And we're going to, after this break, you're going to hear more about them. But think about this. Those that are using our children and our tax dollars and union funds to be able to organize against our children. I mean, really, not everyone, but a significant amount is. As a matter of fact, those who have an agenda with our American education system, they're using it. They don't like Betsy DeVos because she has one agenda, that the children get an education so they can have a future. I mean, who would want to deprive? Think about this. If this wasn't so important, countries like Afghanistan and other ones that are oppressing people, specifically women, not letting them get an education, they're doing that because they're trying to hold them back. Well, you give the ladies the education, they're going to be competing well with the men in the workplace. Well, if we don't give our kids an education, they're not going to be able to compete in the world. And so she's wanting them to be able to succeed. And Proverbs 22:6 says very specifically, says, train a child in the way they should go, and when they get old, they will not depart from it. Think about this. It's not about, that only works for godly training. Hitler understood that. He began to train up the young people in Germany and eventually flipped the nation and began to persecute God's people in a horrific way. God doesn't say that only works for godly teaching. He says that this is the way it works. And so it's important how we're training, our children up in our nation. They're our future. They're the future congressmen and senators and presidents and business owners. And that's very important. Fathers, mothers, and families. But those with agendas other than meeting our kids' education and children, they can't control Betsy DeVos. Those that have this agenda, that the worst case scenario is to have somebody like Betsy DeVos in office because she don't need anything from anyone. They can't control her with reputation. They can't control her with money. They can't control her with threat. They tried all that because she's a billionaire. You know, she's just there to help our kids out. And that's why you're seeing this big, crazy demonstrations taking place right now. But because somebody like that, you just, you know, they can get paid $1 a year and do what they're doing. And we're grateful for that. But what you're seeing is they have people that use the children to fuel their wealth and influence society. They use the children, the teachers' education, teachers' union, the National Education Association. Notice they're talking. We'll show you firsthand after this break. But they're fueling their wealth and their influence in society versus somebody like Betsy DeVos and others who have that same mindset, that those folks are actually using their wealth and their influence to help others and to empower our children and students for a brighter future. I mean, it's a huge difference. When we get back from this break, you're going to see one of the leaders speaking at the teachers union, and he just says it like it is. He tells it exactly. It has nothing to do with the kids. It has to do with power, money, and influence. Make sure you join us after the break. But when you have somebody like Betsy DeVos, which is her family's wealthy, but they chose to use their wealth to be able to help folks instead of just going off and living on some island somewhere like some others do. And now she's working for us. The reason why allegedly the teachers union and these National Education Association, you saw the venom coming back on television. You know, senators were talking very so disrespectful and hateful. But you have to understand, the teachers union has over $340 million a year at their disposal to be able to fund campaigns for like certain senators. You can figure out which one's being funded by how they venom they put out.
To it.
And it's like this is a citizen of the United States, and she's here just to help out. But she's threatening the status quo because what we presently have is not working. And like she said, it was like over 200-year-old system. And it's like the Persian system. It's been around for over 230 years, probably 240, probably more like 300 some years. But she said 200. But they can't make her. I mean, it doesn't really matter.
They can't control her. But it's so important to look at the mere fact that she's even here in that moment as the opportunity to take over this role as a chairman of education. This is a major answer to prayer. As we've been praying for education, we've been praying for our schools, praying for the leaders, recognizing what we've talked in one of our previous programs is that when we see this shift of leadership, don't just say, okay, hey, hurrah, that they're there, and then sit back. No, we've got to support and say, I stand up for this leadership. I stand up for what they're doing. And we see this, and it's just like, this is a major answer to prayer. It's very encouraging.
It is. I mean, but you think about it, it's like saying, well, we got a good quarterback now, let the rest of the team can just leave. It's like, we got to listen to the leadership because this is a big ingrained and rooted down system that during President Jimmy Carter's administration, he established the National Education Association, and it hasn't been here since the Garden of Eden, by the way. And it's grown into this big, huge monstrosity.
Almost.
Yeah, and so now here you have these parents. Look at this now. These are parents. You're about to see something. These parents are in a school district that they know their kids do not have a fighting chance. And they're offering a lottery. There's a limited amount of seats for students in this charter school. And so what they do was, to be fair about it, they give all the kids that want to get in a number. And then they literally have a lottery where they just draw the number to make it fair. Well, that's what's happening here. But Betsy DeVos is saying we want every kid in America to have that choice. But I want to show you what's happening with the teachers union. Because you'll see these parents, and there are hundreds of them in a line, and they're waiting to get in there to see if their kid gets a chance to go to a good school, get a good education, don't have to fear for their life in the school that they would have had to go to. At the same time, these grown folks in the union are marching up and down and saying that don't be fooled, abort charter schools. And it's like, these parents are fighting for their kids. You're actually talking about their kids. As a matter of fact, I want you to take a look at this. But when you see this, look at this big long line of parents who are going, I want my kid to have a fighting chance. And then look at the pickets, the guys with the signs. That is the teachers union and what they're saying about these parents' kids. Take a look.
Even as desperate parents in my city lined up hoping to win a charter school lottery that would let their kids escape horrible government-controlled schools, Union protesters stood outside chanting, "Don't be fooled, abort charter schools."
Don't be fooled, abort charter schools.
They don't want competition. They told me things like, competition is not for education. But the opposite is true. Competition gives us better cars, computers, movies, music. It would work for education too, if they just let.
Don't be fooled, abort charter schools. That's just, it's like the parents are standing there trying to get in the charter school. They're willing to go to a lottery system to see if their kid wins it. They were against the kid. They weren't. I mean, that's what's happening. They're against the children. They turned it into a business for profiteering and making money at the expense of
the next generation.
Of our next generation. And like I said, if you don't educate, if you don't get your education, you're not going to be a breakthrough person, and it's not going to work. The society will be dumbed down. That's why they hold back education in other countries that have tyrants to oppress people, because they don't want them to get educated, because they get educated, then they can do more with their life. Well, you say that can't be true. Well, let's go to actual gathering of the teachers union, where the man says it himself. He tells the teacher union, he says, it's about money, it's about power and teachers, it's not about students. And look for yourself. You see a room full of teachers in the teachers union. Every teacher's not in this union, but you're looking at probably over 1 million, 1.2 million are. And look what he says. It's not about the kid. And he says it. Let's go there now.
And that brings me to my final and most important point, which is why, at least in my opinion, NEA and its affiliates are such effective advocates. Despite what some among us would like to believe, it is not because of our creative ideas. It is not because of the merit of our positions. It is not because we care about children, and it is not because we have a vision of a great public school for every child. NEA and its affiliates are effective advocates because we have power. And we have power because there are more than 3.2 million people who are willing to pay us hundreds of millions of dollars in dues each year because they believe that we are the unions that can most effectively represent them, the unions that can protect their rights and advance their interests as education employees.
So when you hear somebody say it's all about the kids, it has nothing to do with the kids. He said it has nothing to do with the kids. And you're wondering, you're thinking, oh, these poor schools, and they're forcing them to do things they don't want to do. And there's a lot of teachers, great teachers out there. We're not talking about teachers, we're talking about the teachers union. And they're being bound and held back by these same kind of mindsets. And they cannot freely move in the context of that because they would risk this funding mechanism. But then we're going like, oh, this poor school. I mean, they're having to have a transgender bathroom, and they're having to do this and that, and this going on. It's like, that's actually the agenda of the national, of the teachers union and the National Education Association, allegedly. But listen to what he says. This is at the teachers union, and you're finding out it's actually the teachers that are pushing that. It's the teachers union that's pushing that on our children in America. We're feeling so bad for, like, oh, these poor teachers are being. Well, the ones in the union are paying $300 and something million to this organization to be able to cause that to happen. You say that's not so? Well, listen to what he said about the agendas that he's pushing in schools.
But then NEA began to change. It embraced collective bargaining. It supported teacher strikes. It established a political action committee. It spoke out for affirmative action, and it defended gay and lesbian rights. What NEA said and did began to matter. And the more we said and did, the more we pissed people off.
So you're looking as like, who would ever thought that not every teacher, but those teachers were the ones that was taking your kid in, saying they don't care about your kid. They care about the money, the power, the agenda to transform society. And the reason why, the former president, all he did was wrote a suggested letter. He didn't there was no law put out there. And immediately schools started just rapidly creating transgender bathrooms and all this kind of stuff like it was like some law. And it's like, now we know why. It's their agenda. That's what they wanted to be able to promote for our kids. And it's like, wait a minute, our kids are not an experiment. That's not what they're there for, an education, to read, to write, to learn science, to learn math, and to learn, how to function in life. And it's like, wait a minute, you don't even care about our kids? I mean, didn't you hear him say that?
Yeah.
That's exactly what he said.
And to hear someone say that, what's most important is just, we're there for the power.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just, that's scary.
And we can do it because we have people that will pay us. And let me tell you, the dues, $300 a year for every teacher that's in the union, that's, $1.2 million if he has that kind of $300 million, 290-something million in dues. This is important. If you are a member of the teachers union, you're supporting that kind of mindset. You're supporting that. That $300, you're thinking, well, I need somebody to represent me. If you're a Christian, God represents you. You can't be a part of something that's having this ungodly, saying they don't care about the kids, saying that, that it's going to go away from the way God would want it to be. And we're training our children up in the wrong way to go. Right. And so they will never turn back because they won't know God. We're one generation away from a pagan culture. If we don't teach and pass the baton to our next generation, America could be lost. Yeah. And with 15% of regular church attenders who truly have a biblical worldview, according to George Bonnet, and are practicing a biblical worldview, and 4% of millennials, only 4%, that in the school system that's fighting us like this is what I got to say. Thank God for Betsy DeVos. I mean, that's how important she is. You think about it, that she is, she has no strings. Nobody's controlling her. She was put there to be able to take the whole steering wheel of our student. It's not about the National Education Association. It's not about the union. It's about your kid. It's about your grandkids. It's about the future of our country. She's taken their lives and turning them in a direction where there can be student-parent choice, where you say, well, if I have a school in my particular neighborhood, it's close to me, but it's a low-rated school, that it's high in crime, that my kids terrified going there because they don't know, they're more focused on survival than they are actually getting education. And then she wants to be able to give you the money, the tax money that's normally given to that school to you, and you say, I want my kid to be homeschooled, I want my kid to go to this school, I want my kid to go to charter school. You as a parent
has the power to decide.
Yeah, it's a government by the people and for the people. That's your kid. You need it, and it's exciting. And but you have to understand. You see the mindset. Abort charter schools, and don't be fooled. Abort charter schools. We don't care about the kids. We want the money. We want the power. Well, they're not going to just let go. They're not going to just go, that. Oh, you won. We're going to give up hundreds of millions of dollars and give up using your kid for all this kind of stuff. It's going to be a fight. But you know what? Our young people are worth fighting for. They're worth fighting for. And by the way, we saw what happened with Betsy DeVos. So that's a dirty fight. It was so sad what happened to her. And I just thank God for her, which means this. We have to pray for her. We need to pray for all the cabinet members, but pray for Betsy DeVos. Realize that she's over, 65,800,000 plus kids, young people, all different ages, go into school, whether it's a charter school or a tech school or whether it's whatever the school is in your system. And what they want to do is turn the education back over to the states. Somebody says, I don't know. That's how America was founded. Yeah. It needs to go back. You need to go to the school board and determine the direction of your school. You don't need something mandated from Washington, D.C. telling you this is how your kid has to be educated, like Common Core and those different things. And we've heard so many things now from leaders in the school system. They're saying, my hands are tied. If this happens, we elected you to take care of our kids, not to be able to be, a stronghold from Washington, D.C. Somebody's, forcing you to be in, and you got to fight for your kids. Somebody says, well, we will in 5 years. Well, in 5 years, your 10-year-old will be 15. In 5 years, your 15-year-old will be 20. And whatever education they didn't get, they're not going to get it. And corporations, I know we got to go to a break, but corporations today are saying this. They're saying that when these graduates of high school and college get into their corporations, they have to stop and re-educate them because they have not had any education. Not all of them, but the majority of them.
Yeah.
And they have to take them from point one and say, you know, this is an education so that they can function. And because they want their company to make it, I got to teach the young person to be able, I got to give them an education. And you spend all this money on education. You know, our kids, we got grandkids in school now, but we pay, everybody has property. You're paying taxes every year for your school system. You're paying for it. You should determine, you know, what's happening in it.
Where you want them to go.
Yeah, and where it wants to go. And it's your kid's future. It's your son and daughter's future. You want them to have the best chance ever.
Yeah.
If it's simple about you just getting a voucher and you picking a school that you have peace with, whether it's a Christian school, whatever it is, charter school, you're going to be able to do that. But it's got to be broke loose from this whole National Education Association, from the teachers union. And they just told you so you can share this program with other people. They just said it. It's not about your kid. It's about money, and it's about power, and it's about influence. It's just sad, but so many people, you know, do things because of money. Their motivation is money, and Jesus said, you cannot serve God and money too. You'll hate one, and you'll despise the other. And you know, Nigeria, for example, 180 million people living in Nigeria. 80% of them live on $1 a day. And we have somebody marching down the street next to a parent who's fighting for her kid's life to be able to get an education. And they're into money going like, you know, don't be fooled, abort charter schools. And she's there for a reason to be able to get her kid into that school so her kid has a fighting chance. And they said they didn't even care, but we can care. We have new leadership. There's a new wind blowing. We have to begin to get involved. And so as you think about it, you know, she was able to use her wealth and her family's wealth, and so was her husband Richard, to go out and help people and give, you know, schools. And we'll put the breakdown on the torch for you at VFNtv.com, where you can see where they've invested money over all these years. But that's called a philanthropic person, a person who takes what they have to be able to help other people out in their time of needs. But you think about it. It's easy for us to look at somebody that has $5 billion and go, yeah, that's just so nice. You know, that is so good for her and Richard. That's real good for him. Yeah, I'm glad they're doing that with their money. As if we don't have any wealth ourselves. As if her father, you know, was a billionaire automotive industry person, and his father, her husband's father, you know, founded Amway, which is an American, it stands for American Way, but it's a large healthcare type company and services. But do you know who your father is? People say, I don't have anything. You have to understand, the creator of the universe. When you read Genesis 1, go back and begin to read Genesis 1 and take a second look at that, because that's your father. He created the earth. He created the universe. He put the stars in place. He created the shrubs and the trees. He created the animals. He created you. He created man. And then he tells us to go subdue and be over these things on the earth. And it's like you have access to all that. So you think about a philanthropic kingdom, philanthropic person, that kind of mindset where all of a sudden I'm going to get the same mindset she has, because she's one woman. She stood up, she stood bold, and she made a difference. And we got to stand as Christians, we got to begin to stand up. So you can think about the definition of philanthropic as a believer as a person who seeks to promote the welfare of others, especially by generous donations of money to good causes. The kingdom wealth, salvation, healing, miracles, provision, adopted into the family of God, heirs of God, joint heirs with Jesus Christ. Somebody says, well, you know, I have a fixed income. Do you know, I prayed for somebody that didn't have a home. They didn't have a home. And God spoke to me in a dream, and he arranged some certain things out, and he was doing all this. And so my father made sure that the person who needed a home got a brand new home built for them and got it built at 50% off. So you think about that, I don't know, $80,000, $50,000. It doesn't have to come from your pocket. When you pray for people and when you ask God to be able to meet their needs, that is a wealth transfer where the kingdom of God begins to move. God says, boom. He literally took a hold of this contractor, and he says, you know, I will make sure this person can get in this house. And they built it, and they had it priced at a certain amount. And they kept lowering the price, and they lowered the price of the house down to 50% off so that his family could get in there. That is wealth transfer. We just are so caught up in thinking, Well, it works better when it's in my bank account and I have $5 billion and then I'll go help people. Well, the thing about it, you know, you can put things in your car. This is some things that we do. You know, Pastor Barbara Still led us in this direction that you can put a whole bag, like a big major Ziploc bag with, you know, like
toilet paper, toothbrushes, toothpaste, socks, soap, things to give others,
and drinks and different things like that. And you can just stop off and if it's a homeless person's right there, you can, instead of saying, "Oh, you poor homeless person," you're like, "Here, I want to just give this to you."
Practical blessings right there that they can use tangibly.
Yeah, or you know, give somebody a ride somewhere, or believe God that He can create wealth in your life. God is transferring. There's a shift coming in the economy, and He needs men and women who understand how to manage kingdom wealth.
Blessed to be a blessing. Blessed
to be a blessing, and that begin to ask God. Say, God, you can teach me, train me up to be trusted. He don't mind getting money to you as long as He can get money through you. He don't mind you having things, but He minds things having you. And He loves you so much, He's not going to give you something that you make your God. So you got to make up your mind. I can have God in things, but I can't have things if I turn my back on God. And it's because of love. It's not because of denial. And the thing is that things are shifting. And so we can have the same kind of mindset. Kingdom philanthropic people that are going around doing good. He told us to go around doing good. If you see somebody sick, you know, lay hands on them and pray for them and they'll be healed. You know, he says somebody's struggling with some sort of demonic oppression in their life. And Ephesians 6:12 says we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against spiritual wickedness. Jesus Himself explained to us that when a man is struggling with demonic influence in his life, that you can drive that thing out and it has to leave. I mean, that's worth $1 million to somebody who used to be called Legion. Yeah. And now they're free and they're able to just live life.
Freedom.
Yeah. And so your Father created the earth and the universe and the stars and you, and He's holding everything together. He gave His Son for you, that if you accept Him, make Him the Lord of your life, He's literally you're a joint heir with the Son of God, and you're an heir of God. Yeah, she's an heir of a father who had an automotive industry, and she's doing a great thing. I really appreciate her. But she knows what I'm telling you, that God is a greater provider. He has all the wealth ever created. He's above it all. He created it all. And He's waiting for us to say, you know what, God, I want to be philanthropic. Yes. I want to, because a lot of people, say, hey, I wish God would give me $1 million. Then I'll be faithful to God. And God's going, well, I'm trying to get you to be faithful off $100 right now. But if you'll be faithful on $100, I'll give you 1,000. And that's the way things work. When you learn, it says, somebody says, I will actually honor God in the tithes and offerings when I get $1 million. Right? And it's like, if you can't honor Him with a $675 paycheck, you're not going to honor Him with $1 million, because that's what's in your heart. Where your treasure is, that's where your heart is. And we got to begin to shift. We're watching this teachers union sell our kids out for money. But the question is, we have to ask ourselves, are we selling our kids out for money? Are we saying, listen, my father owns a cattle on 1,000 hills. And anything He wants to do on this earth, He can do. He's just asking me to ask Him for it in Jesus' name, and He'll bring it to pass. And I've seen it over and over and over again where God does that. Listen, we're going to talk more about this after this break, because we're going to get a different perspective. Imagine you are like Betsy DeVos. You're standing before, it don't have to be before all of Congress in the world. It could just be towards your neighbor. It could be one person. It could be a few folks. Maybe you're a teacher saying, you know what, I'm going to take a stand like Betsy did. You're going to be surprised. I think education as we know it is about to be turned on its head. And these two, if it's actually a 200, 300-year-old system, because the world's moving on. And we have to begin to say, you know what? We need to do what God is doing. Can you imagine this? Imagine this. I know we got to go to break, but think about this. There was a day when there was no printing press at all. No printers. Today it's digital and all. So only a few people had the Bible. And so when the Gutenberg printing press was created and made, they were terrified of it. They were thinking, my goodness, if you start printing Bibles, everybody's going to have one. Mm-hmm. You know what they were really scared about? They were scared that they were not going to have control anymore. That's it. And the old order always struggles with God begins to do a new thing when things begin to shift. And it looks really, it looks really crazy when you look back at it, but we're looking back at it. But here we are today, and a teachers union is protesting right by a parent who's fighting for their kids. Hundreds of them lined up for a lottery and saying, don't be fooled, abort the chance for your kid's future. And it's interesting the terminology that they use, because over 50 million children have been aborted since 1973. And things are turning. A huge answer to prayer.
Yes.
You know, for years, you know, we happen to be a part of a prayer community that prays on Mondays. For, I guess it's 2009.
2009.
It was some dark days. We're going through that praying like, oh dear Lord.
We're seeing continual answers.
Yeah, I mean, one of our prayers, it was so overwhelming as you're seeing what's taking place in education, for example, and we're impacting all 7 mountains of culture, you know, and one of them is the education mountain. And so we looked at it, and all we could do is begin to profess
grace.
Grace. Grace. Grace. You know, we just prayed. It's like more things happen when we pray grace.
Yeah.
And God's grace is just being shifted. But the thing about it is, you know, you can want to go out there and begin to, you know, have a different look in your yard. But the truth is, your front yard or your backyard, but you got to go start taking up some roots.
Yeah.
And I remember some time back when Pat was working in his yard, and he had this axe, and he was trying to beat all these roots out of the house. He beat and beat and beat and beat and beat. And there's a lot of roots in this education system. I mean, it's you think you'd be embarrassed about saying the things they're saying, but they're unashamedly saying, you know, the things that they're saying. And so that's good for us as parents or grandparents. We can say, okay, well, now we understand. Bye. You know, we're not going to be a part of that. And the only reason that they're surviving is because the government said that we need President Jimmy Carter said we need a National Education Association. It started out small, and now look at it now.
Look at what's happening.
So anybody that tells you right now, we just want a little small little federal thing right here, it can grow into a monstrosity, you know, and it's like, where did this thing come from? And one of the teachers, I'm not going to say who it was, went to the National Education Association in Washington, D.C., and it's like this huge, I think it's an atrium, big, it's amazing what's being built. And it's like, well, why are our kids struggling so much? How come they don't understand? How come they're not educated to the point? Why are corporations having to re-educate our kids after coming through your system? You know, when you hear, it's like, why are they going to? Why would you want to support a failing school? Why not give that mother or that father a voucher and let him or her choose where they want to send their kids? Homeschool, Christian school, you know, charter school, some other public school up the street.
The parent knows better for the children than a teacher would.
You know, it's sort of like saying, why would you want to destroy that kid's future? Give them a chance. Every kid in America should have a chance, no matter where they're living, no matter where they're born, no matter what's going on. Every citizen, every American citizen, kid, deserves a chance. You know, they might not take it, but I'm telling you, it is amazing how many people just needed a chance. I think about Dr. Ben Carson now. He's over HUD. And here he was struggling coming up. His mother was struggling, trying to make things meet. But she stayed steadfast with him, and you know, she'd meet him, read a book every day, and do reports and different things like that. I think Gifted Hands. The movie's a book and a movie called Gifted Hands that you can kind of find out about his story. But we need to work with our parents and help them out. It's hard enough to raise kids in this culture today, but when you have a government institution like the National Education Association, Common Core, the teachers unions that are coming against your kid. I mean, they said, if you missed earlier, this is what they said. We don't care about the kids. Did they say that? Yeah. So we don't care about the kids. Anything. Well, that's just one person's opinion. But then they pan the camera
to a room full of applauding people, cheering and agreeing.
And it looked like they had had signs for every state. You could see Oklahoma. That big sign for Oklahoma was there. And it's like, that doesn't even make sense. I could understand if you're making cars and you're trying to, you know, get the best price and get the best product. I could understand if you are, you know, a farmer trying to grow a whole bunch of corn, but you're talking about human beings. You're talking about children. You're talking about teenagers that they're human.
And they said it was about power.
Yeah. And it's like, you can't profit off of your brother like that. You can't do that, you know? And a fair wage is one thing, but I mean, it's just horrific. As a matter of fact, I don't know if we have enough time to be able to show that. Go back one more time and show this man what he is saying their true motive is. This is a teachers union.
And that brings me to my final and most important point, which is why, at least in my opinion, NEA and its affiliates are such effective advocates. Despite what some among us would like to believe, it is not because of our creative ideas. It is not because of the merit of our positions. It is not because we care about children, and it is not because we have a vision of a great public school for every child. NEA and its affiliates are effective advocates because we have power. And we have power because there are more than 3.2 million people who are willing to pay us hundreds of millions of dollars in dues each year because they believe that we are the unions that can most effectively represent them, the unions that can protect their rights and advance their interests as education employees. Then NEA began to change. It embraced collective bargaining. It supported teacher strikes. It established a political action committee. It spoke out for affirmative action, and it defended gay and lesbian rights. What NEA said and did began to matter. And the more we said and did, the more we pissed people off.
Well, that's from the horse's mouth. And one thing I would be, if I had a young person, one of my children in school today, the first thing I would ask their teacher is,
are you part of the union?
Are you part of the union? That's the first thing I would say. I mean, it doesn't matter what else you say, because they're a teacher, they know how to be educated, they know how to learn, and it's like, you know what you're a part of. And you can say what you want to, but it's like, that's the mindset. And most teachers, I think, aren't, but that's at least 1.2 million are. And he said, we're able to do this because people are willing to pay union dues. That's why he said, so don't be willing anymore. Realize there's another idea coming. There's another way to do this. You still can make a living, but it's time for us to turn our hearts back to our young people. It's time for us to really focus on giving them the education. They're the leaders of tomorrow. Right. And if we don't do it, leadership of the world will shift to another nation. Don't forget you can join us 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Download our app and sign up for our newsletter, The Torch, at VFNtv.com.